Aleksandra, the tutor for the AthenaStudies course, Digital Firm. I'm back to you guys with another knowledge clip. This one is going to be about the analysis. And yeah, I'm just going to explain, a little bit more about what are some tips and tricks to use whenever you're writing it. So let's get started. First thing, as always, I like to introduce, a general range for the word count. Your analysis is the biggest part of your essay because obviously this is where you're introducing your arguments and actually providing your opinion and evidence for that opinion and answering really like with evidence your central question. So in this case, I would recommend, a range of about 1,000 to 1,200 words and maybe even like going on towards the higher end of that just to make sure that you fully explain all of the concepts. Then again, as always, just a quick assignment recap. So for you guys, for Digital Firm, the main objective that you guys are trying to do is to distinguish between the value creation and value capturing in your specific digital platform. So you need to make sure that you address the value proposition, the value creation, and the value capturing that your company or firm specifically does. So in your analysis, these are the three basically value concepts that you need to address because these three value concepts are basically the components of the business model. So if they are able to successfully, perform these, then that means that probably they are going to be a successful digital platform. So the next thing I want to talk about is just the goal of your analysis. Why do you even need to write an analysis? And the reason why is because in this case, you're going to be arguing your points using relevant information and literature, and it's going to basically help you answer your central question. So basically, to what extent does your specific company, create value, capture value, and how does that fit in with their value proposition? So this is the opinion part of your writing assignment. This is where you actually present arguments supporting and refuting basically like your central questions ideas. So it's based on the criteria that you identified in your theoretical framework, and now based on that criteria that you already introduced, you can evaluate and argue these three value concepts and how they apply to your company. So a quick note is just to say you need to discuss obviously your company's value proposition, value creation, and value capturing with supporting evidence. So if you tell us that your company's value proposition, is this certain statement, this certain marketing statement, or, something like that, you need to make sure that you back that all up with in-text references and evidence from either academic sources, or when it comes to the value proposition, maybe you just need to look at your company's website and find their value proposition there. So again, you need to support everything with evidence, even though it is the kind of opinion, quote unquote, part of your essay. You still need to provide evidence for everything you say. And again, you need to evaluate to what extent they are successful in creating value, capturing value, and overall being a successful digital platform. So now let's get into the overall structure and content because I'm going to start big and then narrow it down from there. So first thing, again, you need to address the three value concepts. So proposition, creation, and capturing. So first thing I'm going to talk about is value proposition. So again, these are just the clear and measurable benefits that users would get when buying a particular product or service from a company. So again, this value proposition is kind of like a sales pitch, basically. It should convince your customers that this product is going to be better than others on the market. So it's kind of like basically, yeah, like a sales pitch that your business is doing. And for your value proposition section, make sure obviously you include what your company's value proposition is with evidence and how that that's what their proposition is. Check their website, I would recommend, and some leading questions to kind of help you get started with brainstorming what you're going to write about in this part is basically what differentiates your your company from other competitors, because that's what basically part of the value proposition is showing why this specific product or service is better than others on the market. So what differentiates your company? What is your company's mission and vision? Usually you can find those on their website. What are maybe some rewards or benefits that users would get by using your company's product or service? And also, are there different propositions depending on what type of user? So Obviously, in your case, with a two or multi-sided platform, there probably are going to be multiple, value propositions depending on who is using it. So if it's like some sort of music app, obviously there is going to be a separate value proposition for the artists on the platform and for the users on the platform, because the users aren't necessarily going to get paid, but artists that put their music on that platform would. So those are kind of two different value propositions or two different types of benefits that users and artists or customer base would use your company's digital platform for. So make sure you keep that in mind whenever you're talking about the value proposition. Then next up, we have the value creation. So again, the value creation is basically the core concepts and technologies that your company uses, and how your company wants to create those network effects which create value. How are they creating strong brand association? All of these things are ways that they can create value. So again, this is when your company is basically creating a product more value than the inputs that they're using. So take Facebook, for example. It's literally just a website where they have, just people's profiles and like ways to connect. But those inputs of just that data, it creates a product that's extremely valuable because it creates this huge network effect and a lot of users on the platform. So it can connect people so much better than maybe a different platform could, just because they have all of these pre-existing connections between people and a lot of people use it. So it's kind of like the standard. So in that case, that's like a way that Facebook has very successfully created value. But again, value creation can come from things like I just said, network effects, increasing your brand strength. So just very strong brand association. Obviously, when we see the Apple or Coca-Cola logo, we can automatically recognize it and even have some sort of feeling associated to it. And also very efficient input to output processes. So like I just said, the outputs basically are going to be more valuable than just the basic inputs that they're using. So low cost of production, which is a pretty normal thing in digital platforms specifically. There's really not that much cost because everything's virtual. But yeah, some examples or leading ideas that you could bounce off of is that like maybe your company is successful at creating value due to a certain amount of network effect or a certain range of network effects, or your company increases their value creation via user convenience, user engagement. How do they keep users? How do they connect users on the platform? Things like that. You can find a lot of different examples depending on your digital platform for how they basically create a product that's more valuable to their customers. So that's kind of what the value creation is talking about. And just a quick note on this is that, again, you can base your arguments about whether or not your company is successfully creating value depending on your criteria from your theoretical framework. So let's say, for example, in your theoretical framework, you used a criteria to measure value creation, such as, let's say just like the number of users or the strength of the network effect. So based on that criteria that you introduced in your theoretical framework, now you can say, well, in my business specifically, based on, blah, 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 this evidence, it says like consistently that they have extremely strong network effects and a lot of, a certain amount of network connections. Therefore, based on this evidence, we can conclude that this company successfully creates value to the extent that they have a significant amount of network effects that they offer their users. Therefore they are successful at creating value. So that's kind of a way that you can lead from your criteria to your evidence and then to your conclusion. So again, these are just going to be the main concepts that you're going to use. Your criteria are going to serve as measures to get you to your answer in your analysis. Then the last part I want to talk about is the value capturing. So again, this is where you're going to be discussing how your company generates revenues or makes profit. So once they've created value, now they need to monetize it. So once you have created the value, you can capture it and transform it into profit or revenue in order to sustain the business. So for value capturing, some leading questions that I would recommend to help you get started is, what actions has or does your company take to appropriately maybe price their product? Are they underpricing? Are they overpricing their product? To what extent is your company successful at capturing value? So in this case, like if you're looking at, say, a digital platform such as like Twitter or something, obviously they've created a lot of value because they have a lot of users. The networking is very big there. However, we see that they're not necessarily successful at capturing value because they don't have a subscription, like there's not that many ads on their website. So in that case, the value capturing part, or turning that amount of users into some sort of like monetization, is not as successful. So in that case, I would look at your company and evaluate, does their value creation translate successfully into money and into profit? And some examples of this, like I just said, are user monetization. So how many ads maybe does a user see? Does the ad translate into revenue for your company? The appropriate pricing strategy on those valuable products. So let's say you have a very valuable product, but you don't price it appropriately, either under or over, then that can also affect your revenues or profit. And also, of course, the big goal for any digital company is to increase their stock price, because that obviously conveys to investors that their company is valuable. So in that case, that's another thing you can potentially talk about in terms of value capturing. So a last note on this one is, again, to remember to use your criteria. So for example, if one of the measures that you want to use to gauge whether your company is successfully capturing value is if you decided on a criterion that is revenue, So you introduce this revenue criterion in your theoretical framework, and now in your analysis you say, well, given the revenue threshold criterion that was, in the aforementioned theoretical framework, my company, or whatever, this company that you're talking about, has risen above that threshold for revenue. Therefore, we can conclude that they are successfully capturing value from their users. So in that case, that's another way you can use your criteria to lead to your conclusion about whether or not your company has successfully captured value and successfully made a profit off of the value that they just created. And then the last thing I want to do is, so I went big picture, the three main sections that you need to have in your analysis. And now I'm just going to dive into the the details of it. So you have your overall structure. Like I said, value proposition, creation, and capturing. Those are the three main sections that you need to have in your analysis. And then from there, we can go into, per paragraph or per section might be better. So if we just wanted to focus on value creation section, how do we order the structure? How do we order, the flow within value creation to get us logically from introducing the topic to our conclusion? So in this case, remember that if we're just talking about value creation and you thought of two criteria for value creation, order those in terms of importance. So let's say for value capturing, you had two criteria. One of them was maybe revenue, and another one was the monetization per user. So depending on which one you think is more important, based on evidence, you can put whichever one of those belongs first. So I have another example for value creation in this slide, but it's pretty much the same concept. So which criteria are the most important in answering whether or not your company has successfully created or captured value. And then per section, the logical flow that would make the most sense in terms of the flow of your argument is, first of all, specify whether you're talking about value creation, capturing, or proposition. So it depends on which section you're in, obviously. If you're in a section trying to argue that your company successfully creates value, obviously you shouldn't mention a criterion about capturing value. So stick to the main overall structure, and then within that, then specify which criteria you're going to focus on to help your argument. So for value creation, maybe you want to focus on number of users and number of network connections. And then from there, you focus on each of those criteria, list evidence supporting your argument. So example for number of users, saying, well, this company has reached a certain threshold for the number of users they have on their platform. Therefore, that supports that they have created value, as obviously if there's a lot of users, then that means that there's something valuable on the platform, or there's something valuable the platform has to offer. And then once you've listed evidence supporting your argument, then you need to provide obviously a counter argument to refute it. So you can say, well, although this number of users is very high on this platform, insert counter argument here with with evidence for the counter argument. But then once you've given your counter argument, you need to refute that counter argument and be, well, regardless of this thing that proves that this number of users does not make the company successful, like whatever, you go back and refute that and say, well, overall, this number of users that the company has, despite this counter argument, it successfully creates value. And then that's basically how you would conclude and state that the argument is valid, and that's why your company is successful at whatever it's doing. So that would be, like within the paragraph. So make sure that it's very logical and very concise in the way you present your argument. So you go from point A to point B to point C. Here's my main section. Within that section, here's my criterion that I'm going to evaluate. Here is pros, here is cons, and then I'm going to, again, restate why the pros are more important than the cons. And then in conclusion, my company is successful at creating value or capturing value, like whichever overall section you're talking about. So before I finally conclude, I'm just going to show you guys an example of my essay. So again, be wary about this because this is about taxation, but in this case, well, my analysis is very long, as you can see, but yeah, so basically I just introed with a brief recap about what my issue is, what I'm trying to solve, and then from there I went into each of these. Basically every 2 paragraphs I start switching to a new criterion that I use to evaluate for my research question. So in this case, starting with my second criterion, I was talking about consumer created value and the definition of it as one of my criterion. So this entire paragraph is me pro this criterion, or me supporting, giving supporting evidence for this criterion. And then this second paragraph is talking about, conversely, this has been rejected by, evidence. And then I inserted some evidence, but then at the very end, I conclude that this criterion is successful, that it's valid, etc. So this was just like one of my criteria, and then here's another one that I used, and then here's like the counter argument for that. And then it just ties together at the very end, to conclude that my arguments are valid. But yeah, the structure is going to be slightly different for y'all's, just because you have to talk about 3 main value concepts, while I just had to talk about my criteria. Those were kind of my main concepts, but the structure is going to be pretty similar. So overall, that's going to be it for the analysis video. Again, let me know in the comments if you want one more video to conclude these knowledge clips. Again, I will put a link for the Digital Firm Writing Assignment playlist, and also a link to the slides below in the description box. And yeah, let me know if you want to see a video about the conclusion and extra tips. But yeah, I hope you found this useful. Make sure you check with your tutor about, all of these things as well, because they're going to be the ones grading your assignment, not me. So again, just before you are 100% sure about something, you can always check with your tutor, and they'll be able to also answer any questions that you have. So yep, that's going to be it. Have a great day, guys, and good luck with your writing assignment.